3 fake HOA cops showed up at my door to seize my guns, but they had no idea whose house they picked. I wasn't just ready, I was trained. Before we get started, make sure to hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what happens next. The sun rose slowly over Ridgewood Estates, spilling soft golden light across the tidy suburban neighborhood. Lawns shimmered with dew, sprinklers ticked rhythmically, and the streets were unusually calm for a Saturday morning. It was the kind of morning that made people believe everything was right with the world. James Walker sat on his porch with his usual posture, straight-backed, alert even in rest. A mug of freshly brewed coffee rested in his hands, and the steam curled up into the crisp air. He was a man in his late 40s, with short cropped hair and eyes that had seen both calm and chaos. As a retired military officer, he valued routine, discipline, and peace. His mornings followed a strict schedule: early jog, coffee at precisely 8 o'clock a.m., light gardening afterward. It wasn't just habit, it was a way to keep order in his life. He adjusted the American flag mounted by his door, a small act of reverence he performed every morning. As he stepped back to admire it, something down the street caught his attention. A black SUV, tinted so dark he couldn't see inside, crept slowly toward his house. At first, he assumed it was a delivery truck or perhaps a neighbor's visitor, but the vehicle didn't pass by. It rolled to a stop directly in front of his driveway. James narrowed his eyes. The SUV had no visible license plate. Its engine idled quietly, and for a brief moment, nothing happened. Then, 3 men climbed out. They wore dark tactical outfits, their boots scuffed, their vests labeled HOA Security Enforcement in bold white letters. James froze, not out of fear but calculation. His HOA didn't have armed patrols, nor did they employ anyone who wore tactical gear. They relied on volunteer neighborhood watch groups, folks who walked around with reflective vests and friendly smiles, not men in intimidating outfits pretending to be authority figures. The 3 approached his porch, their movements not coordinated like trained officers, but staggered and hesitant. One man constantly glanced back at the SUV, as if checking for backup that wasn't there. Another fidgeted with a badge hanging loosely from his vest. James immediately felt the atmosphere shift. The tallest man knocked firmly on the door, trying to project authority. "Mr. Walker," he called out, "we're here for a mandatory safety inspection. HOA regulations require you to surrender your firearms temporarily." James opened the door partway, his expression neutral. "I wasn't aware of any such regulation," he replied evenly. The man straightened his posture. "It's a new rule," he said quickly. "Just passed. We need to take them for inspection now." James studied them carefully. Their uniforms didn't match. Their badges looked cheap and inconsistent. Their posture lacked the discipline of professionals. Every instinct in his body told him these men were imposters. He didn't show it, but inside, his mind shifted gears. "All right," he said calmly. "Wait here. I'll get the paperwork." He shut the door slowly and locked it without making a sound. Inside, James moved swiftly. He entered his office, where several monitors displayed live feeds from the security cameras mounted around his property. He zoomed in on the SUV. No plates, dark windows, no visible markings. On the porch camera, he saw the 3 men glancing around nervously. He opened a heavy binder from the bookshelf labeled Emergency Protocols. Most people might have called it paranoia. James called it preparedness. His military career had taught him to expect the unexpected. He activated his security system fully. Doors locked, floodlights armed, curtains drawn strategically, motion sensors activated. The atmosphere in his home shifted from peaceful to fortified in less than 2 minutes. Through a narrow side window, James observed the men. One tapped a walkie-talkie that wasn't even turned on. Another whispered to the tallest man, his hands gesturing nervously. They were improvising. They weren't used to resistance. James picked up the phone and dialed the local police. His tone was measured, precise, the way he'd given situation reports hundreds of times before. This is James Walker. Three individuals in tactical outfits, claiming to be HOA security, are attempting to enter my home under false pretenses. Black SUV, no plates. Three males, mid-30s to 40s. My address is Ridgewood Estates, 17 Pine Lane. The dispatcher immediately took him seriously. Units are on their way, Mr. Walker. Please stay inside and do not engage. Outside, the neighborhood was slowly waking up. Curtains twitched. A couple across the street stood on their porch, whispering. A teenager paused mid-jog, pulling out earbuds to watch. The impostors noticed this attention, and unease spread among them. James decided to apply a little psychological pressure. He opened the door slightly and said, I just called the HOA board to confirm your inspection. They're checking your authorization right now. The impostors froze. For a brief moment, panic flickered across their faces. That's unnecessary, one stammered. James didn't answer. He simply shut the door again, calmly. Minutes stretched. The men began arguing softly. One checked his watch repeatedly. Another scanned the street nervously. Their confidence was fading quickly. They knocked again, this time louder and more aggressive. Open the door, Mr. Walker. This is your last warning. James didn't respond. He didn't need to. Down the street, two real police cruisers rolled in silently, their lights flashing without sirens. Officers stepped out, positioning themselves tactically, observing before moving. The impostors didn't notice immediately. When they finally did, their reaction was instant panic. One bolted toward the SUV. Another whispered frantically into the dead walkie-talkie. The tallest man froze in place, realizing they were caught. Police officers moved swiftly, issuing clear commands. Hands where we can see them. On the ground now. Two of the men tried to run, but didn't make it far. Officers intercepted them within seconds. The third dropped his fake badge and surrendered with his hands raised. Neighbors gathered quietly, shocked by the unfolding scene. Parents pulled their children back into houses. Some whispered in disbelief. Others filmed from a distance. The fake HOA cops were led away in handcuffs, their SUV towed off the street. Police later revealed that the men had been part of a small group targeting suburban neighborhoods, pretending to be HOA officials to gain entry into homes. They relied on authority and surprise to pressure homeowners into compliance. James Walker had ruined their plan before it ever began. His calm, tactical approach had turned their scheme into a trap they walked right into. That evening, after the police were gone and the neighbors had retreated into their homes, James sat back on his porch. The air was cool, the sky painted in deep twilight. His coffee mug was warm in his hands again. He looked out at the flag fluttering gently above the steps. He didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He simply sat in silence, thinking. His life had been about preparation, awareness, and discipline. Some might call it excessive, but tonight it had kept his community safe. The neighborhood was quiet again. Children's laughter echoed faintly from a distant backyard. Porch lights flickered on, one by one. From his chair, James kept a watchful eye on the street. Not paranoid, but vigilant. He knew one thing for certain. Preparedness wasn't paranoia. It was protection. And sometimes that quiet vigilance was what stood between safety and chaos.